Today, when you get bored, you reach for your phone. You don't think about it, you don't plan it, your hand just moves. 1 second of silence and suddenly you are scrolling, watching, refreshing, checking, looking for anything to avoid being alone with your own mind. But for almost every human who ever lived, that escape did not exist. No phone, no internet, no television, no music app, no video games, no books, no electricity, and no endless feed waiting in your pocket. Just the body, the group, the fire, the sky, the weather, the animals, and a mind that had to entertain itself. Which raises a strange question. What did ancient humans actually do when they were bored? The obvious answer is simple. They probably didn't have time to be bored because they were too busy surviving, too busy hunting, too busy running from predators, too busy trying not to starve. But that answer is not really true, and the real answer is a lot more interesting. Because boredom may not have been useless, it may not have been wasted time, it may have been one of the hidden forces that made us human. For most of history, humans did not live like we do now. They did not wake up to alarms, they did not commute, they did not work 8-hour shifts, they did not stare at clocks, they did not have schedules broken into tiny pieces. Time just moved differently. There was work, but the work was not always constant. There were moments of danger, moments of hunger, moments of fear. But there were also long empty spaces, waiting for food to cook, waiting for animals to move, waiting for storms to pass, waiting for the heat of the day to fade, waiting for night to end, waiting for someone to return, waiting for nothing in particular, and in those empty spaces, something happened. The human mind began to wonder, and when the human mind wonders, it does not stay empty for long. It starts creating. This is the part most people get wrong about ancient life. They imagine early humans as simple, almost animal-like. They picture them crouched in caves, grunting, shivering, barely surviving. But ancient humans were not stupid versions of us. They were us. Same brain, same emotions, same boredom, same jealousy, same curiosity, same need to laugh, same need to belong. Same need to explain the world. If you took a baby from 40,000 years ago and raised it today, that baby could learn language. It could use a phone, go to school, watch movies, make jokes, fall in love, have anxiety, get bored, because the ancient human brain was not empty. It was powerful. It just lived in a world with far fewer distractions. So when boredom arrived, there was nowhere to send it. No screen could absorb it, no algorithm could redirect it, no notification could interrupt it. Boredom had to become something else. And one of the first things it became was story. Imagine a small group of people sitting near a fire. The day is over, the tools are repaired, the children are close, the food is eaten, the dark is pressing in from every direction, and there is nothing left to do. Then someone starts talking. Maybe they'll tell what happened during the hunt, but they'll make it bigger, funnier, scarier. Maybe the animal was not just large, it was enormous. Maybe someone almost died. Maybe someone acted brave. Maybe someone acted stupid. Maybe everyone laughs because everyone knows the story is only half true. But that is the point. A story does not have to be perfectly true to carry something real. It carries memory. It carries warning. It carries identity. It tells the group who they are. Before writing stories were storage. They were how people remembered where the water was, which plants could hurt you, which animals moved at night, which relatives had died, which places were sacred, which mistakes should never be repeated. In fact, a boring evening could become a history lesson, a survival guide, a comedy show, a religious ceremony, all at once. And this matters because humans are not the strongest animal. We are not the fastest. We do not have claws. We do not have night vision. We do not have thick fur. but we can remember things that did not happen to us, and that is what a story does. A child can learn from a danger they had never even experienced. A young hunter can fear a river he has never fallen into. A group can remember a famine that happened before some of them were even born. Story turns one person's experience into everyone's knowledge, and boredom gave humans the time to tell those stories. But they did not just tell stories, they watched each other. This sounds small, but it may have been the oldest forms of entertainment on Earth. Humans are obsessed with other humans. We want to know who likes who hates who is lying, who is loyal, who is dangerous, who is generous, who is challenging, and who is hiding something. In a small ancient group, this was not meaningless drama. This was survival information. If someone refused to share food, you needed to know. If someone was brave under pressure, you needed to know. If someone was reckless, you needed to know. If two people were becoming close, the whole group would notice. Before social media, there was still a social network. It was just made of faces, voices, glances, and whispers. A bored ancient human could not scroll through strangers online, but they could study the people around them. They could gossip, they could joke, they could tease, they could argue, they could, intimidate someone until the entire group laughed. And this kind of social play was not pointless. It taught people the rules, what was funny, what was offensive, what made someone angry, what made someone respected, what made someone trusted. Ancient boredom became social intelligence, but boredom also became actual play. And this might be one of the most important answers, because when ancient humans got bored, they played. Not just the children, the adults too. They raced, they wrestled, they threw objects, they tested balance, they copied animals, they invented contests, they practiced skills without calling it practice. A child throwing a stick at a target was playing, but they were also learning to aim. A teenager chasing another teenager was playing, but they were also training speed. A group laughing during a mock fight was playing, but they were also learning strength, timing, control, and courage. This is a strange genius of play. It teaches the body before the mind realizes it is being taught. Modern people separate fun and training. Ancient people probably did not. A game became preparation. A joke became a lesson. A competition could reveal who was fast, who was careful, who gave up, and who stayed calm. Play made survival skills feel interesting, and boredom created the space for play. But then there is music, and music is where ancient boredom starts to feel almost mysterious, because at first, music seems unnecessary. A song does not kill an animal. A rhythm does not build a shelter. A flute does not stop the cold. So why did humans make music? Why spend time making sound when the world was already dangerous? Why carve an object just so air could move through it? Why clap hands? Why beat sticks? Why sing into the dark? The answer is that music does something ordinary speech cannot. It joins people together. A group that sings together breathes together. A group that dances together moves together. A group that keeps rhythm together feels connected without even needing to explain why. This is powerful because ancient humans survived in groups. A lone human was vulnerable. A group could protect itself, share food, raise children, remember more, fight better, move further. But groups are difficult. People get angry. People compete. People become jealous. People disagree. Music may have smoothed the edges. It gave the group one feeling all at the same time. One rhythm. One shared moment. And maybe that's why music is everywhere. Every culture has it. Every human society finds some way to make rhythm, voice, movement, and sound matter. So maybe boredom, beside a fire, did not stay quiet for long. Maybe someone tapped a pattern, someone else copied it, Someone sang. Someone laughed. Someone stood up. Someone moved. And suddenly, nothing became something. Silence became rhythm. Stillness became dance. A long empty night became memory. This is one of the strangest things about humans. We can take time and turn it into meaning. No other animal does this the way we do. A bird can sing, a wolf can howl, a chimp can play, but humans gather around sound and make it symbolic. We make songs for death, songs for birth, songs for fear, songs for love, songs for gods, songs for work, songs for people who are gone. Ancient boredom may have helped create the first performances, and performance may have helped create culture. But boredom did not only create sound, it created images. At some point, some ancient human looked at a wall, or a bone, or stone, or a piece of wood, and decided it should not stay blank. Think about how strange that is. A blank wall is not a problem. A blank stone is not dangerous. A blank cave does not need fixing. But someone still made a mark, a line, a handprint, an animal, a symbol, a shape. And tens of thousands of years later, we are still staring at those marks trying to understand what they meant. Were they memories? Were they rituals? Were they maps? Were they hunting magic? Were they teaching tools? Were they stories? Were they just beautiful? The truth is, we still do not fully know. And that is what makes them so haunting. Because art is evidence that ancient humans were not just surviving the world, they were interpreting it. They saw animals and did not only think food, they thought image, spirit, power, movement, meaning. They saw hands and left handprints, as if they were saying, I was here, I existed, I touched this place. And maybe that is one of the oldest human desires, to leave a trace, to push back against time, to make something that lasts longer than your own body. Boredom gives the mind room to ask strange questions. What if I draw this animal? What if I carve this shape? What if I mix this pigment? What if I press my hand against stone and blow color around it? What if someone sees it later? What if someone remembers me? That is not survival, that is imagination. And imagination is one of the things that made humans dangerous in a completely new way. Because once you can imagine an animal on a wall, you can imagine an animal before you hunt it. Once you can imagine a spirit, you can imagine a rule. Once you can imagine a place you're not standing in, you can plan. Once you can imagine tomorrow, you can begin to prepare for it. The same mind that creates art can create strategy. And boredom gave that mind time to practice. But there is another thing ancient humans did when they were bored. They watched. This sounds boring, but it may be possible for us to fully understand now. Ancient people lived inside nature with an attention span. Modern people, we can barely even imagine this. They watched animal tracks. They watched clouds. They watched insects. They watched fire burn. They watched the moon. They watched the stars. They watched where birds flew. They watched which plants changed colors. They watched how water moved. They watched each other's faces. A modern person gets bored and looks away from the world. An ancient person gets bored and looks deeper into it. And when you look long enough, pattern begins to appear. You notice certain animals come to certain places. You notice that birds become quiet before danger. You notice that the moon changes in a cycle. You notice that stars return. You notice that plants grow after certain kinds of weather. You notice that smoke moves differently when the air changes. This is not formal science, but it's the beginning of scientific thinking. Observation, pattern, memory, prediction. Ancient humans did not need laboratories to be intelligent. Their laboratory was the world, and boredom gave them time to study it. A person staring at the sky because there's nothing else to do might eventually notice that the sky is not random. A person watching animals might learn how to track them. A person watching fire might learn how heat changes materials. A person playing with a stone might discover a sharper edge. A person waiting might become an inventor. That is one of the great secrets of boredom. It looks like nothing from the outside, but inside the mind, something is moving. And sometimes that movement becomes a tool. Tools were not always invented in one dramatic moment. There was probably not one ancient genius who suddenly discovered everything. More likely, tools improved slowly. A sharper flake, a better grip, a stronger knot, a cleaner cut, a different shape, a better way to carry water, a better way to scrape hide, a better way to start fire. Small changes repeated across generations, and some of those changes probably came from necessity, but some may have come from idle hands, from someone sitting there, turning an object over, testing it, shaping it, messing with it, because there was time, because they were curious, because they were bored. Modern people often treat boredom like a failure, like a gap that needs to be filled immediately. But boredom is also the space where experimentation begins, when nothing demands your attention. Your attention then becomes available. And ancient humans had attention in a way we almost never do. No buzzing pocket, no glowing rectangle, no endless noise, just long contact with the physical world. Stone, bone, wood, skin, fire, water, dirt, hands. The mind had fewer places to escape, so it went deeper into things in front of it. This may also explain something else. Why ancient life was probably filled with making, not just making to survive, but making to belong. I'm talking beads, decorations, patterns, body paint, carved objects, personal ornaments. These things matter because they show that humans cared more than food. They cared about identity, beauty, status, memory, ritual. Maybe someone wore a shell because it looked good. Maybe because it showed where they came from. Maybe because it proved they had traveled. Maybe because someone gave it to them. Maybe because it meant they belonged. That is the strange thing about objects. Humans fill them with meaning. A rock can become a tool. A shell can become jewelry. A bone can become music. A wall can become a story. A fire can become a theater. An empty hour can become culture. But not every bored moment became art, or tools, or stories. Sometimes, ancient humans probably did the thing modern people fear most. They did nothing. They sat. They rested. They stared into the fire. They listened to the wind. They watched smoke. They lay in the shade. They felt their bodies recover. They let thoughts rise and disappear. This might be the hardest part for us to understand nowadays, because modern boredom feels like pain. The moment nothing is happening, we feel something is wrong. We need stimulation, noise, input, a distraction. But ancient humans may have been better at empty time, not because they were more peaceful, but because they had no choice. They could not delete boredom. They had to live with it. And when you live with boredom long enough, it changes. The first few moments felt restless, then uncomfortable, then strange, then the mind begins to settle. And after a while, you may notice things that you were too distracted to hear. Your own thoughts, your own fears, your own memories, the sound of people breathing, the rhythm of the fire, the size of the sky. Maybe this is why boredom is so unbearable now. Not because it's empty, but because it's too full. Full of thoughts we never let surface. Full of questions we never answer. Full of creativity we never give time to form. Ancient humans did not have the option to silence every uncomfortable thought with entertainment, so they had to face it themselves. And maybe that made them more imaginative, or more spiritual, or more connected, Or maybe just more comfortable with being alive without constantly needing proof that something was happening. Then everything changed. Not all at once, slowly. Farming changed time. Cities changed time. Clocks changed time. Factories changed time. Electricity changed time. Screens changed time. And finally, the smartphone changed boredom itself. For the first time in human history, boredom became optional. You no longer had to sit with it, you could erase it instantly. In a line, in a waiting room, at a red light, laying in bed, at dinner, even while talking to someone else. The smallest empty space could be filled. And we called this progress. And in some ways it was. Modern entertainment is amazing. You can hear any song, watch any story, read any fact, talk to almost anyone, but there was a trade. We gained infinite stimulation, and we lost the old kind of boredom. The kind that stretched, the kind that wandered, the kind that made people look at the sky until it became a calendar, look at animals until they became myths, look at stone until it became a tool, look at silence until it became music, look at each other until they became stories. Ancient boredom was not comfortable, but it was productive in the deepest sense. Not productive like answering emails, not productive like checking tasks off a list, productive like creating meaning where nothing existed before. And that may be what separates humans from every other culture. We do not simply live in a world, we remake it in our minds. Then we remake it with our hands. A bored wolf, for example, does not paint in a cave. A bored deer does not invent a song. A bored crocodile does not tell a myth about where the stars came from. But a bored human might. A bored human might stare into a fire and imagine the dead. A bored human might look at the moon and give it a story. A bored human might turn a hunt into a legend. A bored human might turn footsteps into a dance. A bored human might turn fear into a god. That is the real answer. When ancient humans were bored, they did not just pass time. They transformed it. They turned waiting into storytelling, rest into imagination, play into training, sound into music, marks into art, observation into knowledge, silence into thought, and thought into culture. So the next time you are bored and your hand reaches for your phone, pause for a second, because that feeling is older than civilization, older than farming, older than writing, older than cities, older than almost everything you think of as human. It is the same restless emptiness that once sat beside fires, under stars, inside caves, beside rivers, in forest, on open plains, just waiting for the mind to do something with nothing. And for most of human history, that nothing was enough. Enough to create stories, enough to create songs, enough to create gods, enough to create art, enough to create the first versions of who we are today. We think boredom is what happens when life becomes empty, but maybe that is wrong. Maybe boredom is what happens right before the mind starts building a world. And maybe the most human thing your brain can do is not escape boredom, but survive it long enough to see what it becomes. Because before civilization had cities, before history had writing, before culture had a name, there was a person, sitting in silence with nothing to do, watching the fire, thinking. And from that silence, the human world began.